spent a lot of time down at GM. I keep coming up with
That's the first time I ever heard you talk.
Didn't even have to ask. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, call the roll.
Mayor Stafford. Here. Alderman Lincoln.
Here.
Alderman Sahaski. Alderman Weston.
Here.
Alderman Sherman.
Here.
Alderman Thompson.
Here.
Alderman Woodward. Here. City Attorney Hawthorne.
Here.
All present except for second ward, Your Honor.
Item 1.
Sal, the minutes of the council meeting held on February 1st are hereby approved.
Do I hear a motion?
Move it. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Resolved, the city clerk is authorized and directed to advertise, receive sealed bids in his office on or before March 7th up to 4 p.m. and to be open at 4:15 p.m. on March 7th in the council chambers for the furnishing of the City of Fulton with gasoline and diesel fuel in accordance with specifications prepared by the City of Fulton Engineering Department.
Mayor, is this for like a one-year contract?
Yes.
Is there a way to put a provision in there for price variations? Oil's at a 9-year high. Diesel's going for $205.9 retail. If the price of oil drops back to where it should be, is there any way that we can get that built in? So we don't, are we going to be paying like a 12-month price as of today? I mean, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. We don't pay any of the taxes on it, so, but still the price is up high.
At least have Ron be cognizant of that when he draws up
We could
the,
ask Ron if it might be better to do a 6-month contract. I would suspect that anybody who's
Either
going
that
to
or-
make a bid would want to be locked in as long as possible.
here, there, can they price it at like spot price or cost plus a certain amount? Okay. I just don't want to see the price of oil go back to, $15 a barrel and we're still paying $205.
Definitely not.
I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Resolved that the clerk be authorized and directed to advertise for a public hearing relative to a proposed local law entitled Dangerous Dogs, Boarding Fees, which would amend Chapter 57 of the Fulton City Code.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Resolved that this council accepts a proposal of William Gamble in the amount of $30 plus $10 per complaint for nuisance animal trapping in the city of Fulton.
Do I hear a motion?
Is this the same rate as Lyle? What's his face from
Willoughby?
2 weeks
I believe
ago?
it was. Was this the same rate? as-
Yeah,
I believe so.
Yes.
Okay. I'll move it.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Whereas the meeting of the council held on February 1st, the city clerk was authorized and directed to advertise for a public hearing to be held at this meeting of February 15th at 7 p.m. relative to a proposed local law which would remedy traffic problems in the area of G. Ray Bodley High School. Mayor Stafford will declare the hearing open.
This is what is proposed right here?
Yes.
The proposal that we have is resolved that the following amendments are made to the city code. Article 165-14D regarding Chestnut Street, that is repealed. That is the the one way for that block, yes. Next, 165-48 is amended to add William Gillard Drive south from southmost parking lot entrance, exit to Cedar Street.
Making that one way.
That's making that a one-way. 165-52 is amended to add Cedar Street, both William Gillard Drive and William Gillard Drive South, Cedar Street, student parking lot, north, Cedar Street.
It's replacing stop signs.
Stop signs. And 165-58 is amended to add William Gillard Drive east from Cedar Street to Chestnut Street, except for recessed visitor parking area.
No parking.
There was a no parking. This was based on, these recommendations are based on a traffic study done by our traffic department and have been brought before the school official, superintendent of schools. He's gone to the school board with us, and they are in favor of these changes. Is there anyone in the audience that would care to speak on this? Anyone on the council?
No.
None? I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
All effort.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We'll now entertain a motion to approve the local law authorizing the changes that were mentioned.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Whereas a meeting of the Common Council held on February 1st, the city clerk was authorized and directed to advertise for public hearing to be held at this meeting of February 15th relative to a proposed local law which would amend Chapter 62 of the Fulton City Code entitled Mechanical Code. Mayor Stafford will declare the hearing open.
Do you want to, or do you want Brace to speak on this?
Actually, Brace, that's what he came for.
Yeah, would you, Brace, would you just advise everybody what was done here, what is proposed, and why? Don't have ours up.
Basically this does is correct an oversight when both the plumbing and the mechanical codes were rewritten that allows for a HVAC mechanical contractor only to sit on the board, the combined boards, for their expertise. The other part of the amendments to it are adding within the violation list the addition of penalties, which would include restitution for substandard work to alleviate the homeowner from further cost if the contractor should be found guilty.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience who would care to speak on this? Anyone on the council?
I'd just like to add that, with conjunction with what Brace said, we had a court case where a gentleman was charged with, actually under all 3 codes, with doing work without a license, and we requested restitution. It was a very bad job, and there was serious financial problem for the person. And the attorney for the worker raised the question that the court didn't have any basis to grant restitution. We had quite a legal argument about it. We ended up resolving it, but that's why I've added this in here, so there's going to be no question in the future. And we will have to have a further public hearing on the electrical code itself, because that was not advertised as part of this, because we're going to add that same language for the electrical code.
And this is done to protect the homeowners.
The homeowners, correct. So at least there's some, people should have an assurance that when somebody's licensed to work in the city of Fulton that they are competent, and if they are not licensed, at least there's some protection if they do the work substandardly, that they can be compensated for that.
Good. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll offer that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll now entertain a motion to approve the local law.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Whereas the meeting of the council held on February 1st, the clerk was authorized and directed to advertise for a public hearing to be held at this meeting of February 15th relative to a proposed local law which would amend Chapter 118 of the Fulton City Code entitled Plumbing. Mayor Stafford will now declare the hearing open.
Same thing.
This is just changing the language in the plumbing code to reflect the changes we just made in the mechanical code, because both of them serve together. Anyone in the audience care to speak on this? Council. Entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now entertain a motion to approve the local law.
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Resolved, the city clerk be authorized and directed to advertise for a public hearing to be held on Tuesday, March 7th at 7 p.m. relative to a proposed local law which would amend Chapter 61 of the electrical code.
Motion.
Is this going to do the same thing as you?
Same thing as we just did to the other two. We have a motion?
Yes.
And a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Resolved, the city clerk report for December 1999 in the amount of $5,070.33 is hereby received, approved, and placed on file.
Motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Resolved, the city clerk's annual report for 1999 in the amount of $69,433.41 is hereby received, approved, and placed on file.
I'll move that one too.
I'll second.
Motion? And second? Is there a motion and a second?
Yes, we do.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah.
I just got a question. Joe, how does that compare to year before?
It's down
By how much?
quite a bit, about 20-something thousand, and most of it is in the building
Building fees?
permit, building fees, about 90% of it.
So I know we talked about when we decided to do that we would at least review as to whether we felt that was beneficial to do that or not. I don't know whether, what's the feeling of the council? Do they feel it's still beneficial to waive the fees?
Yes.
The-
I guess.
Yes.
I got a question though, on the $26,000, is that typically what the city takes in every year, or is that take into account the building permits if they were issued and charged. Is that over what we would normally have taken in? Because if it's over, then it would prove that, maybe it was an incentive. I guess we won't,
Which line?
It's just a question. You can look at
The fees themselves are down quite a bit. Without seeing the figures, but I remember when I saw the annual report, when Mary got it done, that's the first thing I mentioned, that it was down. Seemed like we were in almost 97,000 last year, or the year before. And I asked her where it was, and she said it was the building fees, permit fees.
That's good.
I don't have any concrete figures in front of me, but that's the majority of it.
That's right. That's a good thing.
That's one of those judgment things, you make a decision based on what you think will be beneficial.
I guess the only way to really compare it, though, is to, and I don't think we kept track or kept records of it, but would be to compare how many building permits we actually issued and what we would have charged on those permits. That would have given us a better idea of what the actual number would have been.
Would that information be available in the computer program they have? All right, we'll see if we can't get that before the next meeting for you.
Okay.
Next item.
Did we vote on that?
Resolved that the city clerk as records management officer for the city of Fulton be authorized to dispose of records that no longer have a purposeful, useful, or legal purpose in accordance with the laws of the State Education Department and the MU1 schedule.
Motion.
I'll move it.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Notation that the appointment by Mayor Stafford of David Sweeney, 609 East Broadway, Fulton, New York, to the Census 2000 Committee is hereby entered into the minutes of this council meeting of February 15th as a matter of record.
Next item.
Resolved that the city chamberlain be authorized and directed to transfer $3,500 from the A1990 contingent account into the A1440.4402 engineering account for engineering services to be performed by BB&L regarding Waterhouse Creek and Van Buren Park.
Alderman Weston, would you care to speak on that since you're a member of the Environmental Committee and they were the ones looking at this?
Sure. Myself and Ed Sahosky and Alderman Woodward are all members of that committee, along with the city attorney and assistant to the mayor, John Crook, and environmentalist Sandy Weston. We have been looking at this for most of last year, and I think we're trying to solve a couple of different situations. We've looked at Van Buren Park. It's one of the biggest parcels in the city, and it's basically just sitting there, and we have some thoughts and ideas on what we would like to have that become. So it's actually a combination of the Environmental Committee and the Recreation Committee, of which two of the aldermen are on both committees. But we certainly, as our goal, we want to look at Van Buren Park, look at some of what we think can happen down there. We want to do two different things. We wanted to environmentally look at it as to the stability of the ground itself. We want to make some changes and looking at the engineer will give us an idea on what needs to be done down there if to make the property to be used for what we want to use it for. So from a recreational standpoint, we've certainly got a lot of input from Alderman Sherman, and we would like to do some things down there in the recreation area. We would like to develop a bicycle trail, a skateboarding trail, various things like that. So this will be one more step in determining the viability of the site itself.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
I'll offer that.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Is there anyone in the audience that has business to bring before the council?
Mr. Mayor, gentlemen, you too, Bob.
I knew it. I got you a microphone.
Thank you.
I didn't turn it on, though.
I've been storing up my my time because, as you know, I've been here for a while, so hope you allow me some little extra time. I have 2 points I want to speak on. And I know you wore both hats, and I'm hoping you will keep the hat of mayor tonight until I at least get done. I want to talk about removal of no parking signs first. The second point I want to talk about is the $800,000 somebody suggested get thrown in the river in last week's paper. First, the sign. I want you to know I have a high regard for the police department. My 2 sons are both detectives in the Florida Police Department. So whatever I say is not in any way derogatory to our police department. But back in 1990, Jim Myers was alderman. Jack Krieger was traffic detective, or traffic manager. We were having problems with people backing out of my driveway and hitting parked cars directly across from the driveway. The first one to get hit was a teacher at the school. The second one got hit was someone up at the church. So I called Jack Krieger and said, we have to do something about it because during the winter months, the road gets so narrow, there's no room to get out of the driveway. Well, we went to the Common Council, they passed a law, put the sign up, no parking November 1st to April 1st, this side of the street. It was going well for 9 years. 2 weeks ago, great big black Blazer was parked directly across from our driveway. Being good neighbors, we didn't want to bother the neighbors across the street. We backed around it 4 or 5 times. My son-in-law backed into it with a great big pickup truck and plow, smashed the door. I called the neighbor. She said, if you were a good neighbor, you would have came over and told us instead of trying to drive around it. I said, I thought I was being a good neighbor by not bothering you. So either way, I'm still wrong. But please come out. Police officer came on the job. He asked my son-in-law for his license, checked his registration, his insurance, his inspection sticker, the color of his socks, and everything else he can get out of him. And the young man across the street was never spoken to. In front of the police officer, the young man that lives there and his friend that was parked there were bad-mouthing my wife and my daughter in the presence of the mother, who said nothing. If father was there, it wouldn't have happened, the car wouldn't have been there, but the father wasn't home. Instead of the police officer giving either 2 tickets or no ticket, he gave 1 to my son-in-law and none to the illegally parked vehicle in the road. The sign said no parking. I showed it to the police officer and he chose not to give the ticket. I checked into all that. I'm told that police officers have the right to not issue a ticket if they don't want to. And we know that happens because people park out in the street after 12 midnight, they don't get tickets. They park in no parking zones, they get tickets. They don't get any tickets. I had Pop-Up's restaurant downtown. 1 hour and 55 minutes, I went out and I found a ticket. The next week I went out and 1 hour and 45 minutes, I found a ticket. 2-hour parking. I see cars parked in no parking zones causing havoc with traffic. They're not ticketed. I asked the police officer respectfully, why aren't you issuing a ticket to that car? It's the cause of an accident. He says, no, it isn't. I said, if he wasn't there, no one would have hit him. You should be giving at least the vehicle a ticket, if not the driver. Well, he chose not to. I was a little annoyed because the man that lives across the street works in the city garage. The wife is on the Democratic committee, and the woman that wrote up the traffic report is the mother of the young man that had his car hit. So I got 3 whammies in 1 shot. We let it go. The very next morning, The same Blazer was parked in the same spot, defying me, the law, and that sign. And I called Mark Spahn and told him about it. He said he would watch for it. 2 days later, my son-in-law is leaving the driveway with his truck, and this kid comes around the corner as usual, 40 miles an hour on two wheels, cuts my son-in-law off, goes in the driveway, gives my son-in-law the finger, and goes in the house. My son-in-law is 250 pounds, 6'2". He's got a little baby in the car seat, thank God, because he would have broke more than his finger. The neighborhood I come from in New York, there would be a lot of kids running around with bandages on their fingers. But what I would have wanted was the police officer, when he heard those kids being disrespectful, to say, here's a ticket for illegal parking. They wouldn't have defied me, the law, and everything else if they were issued that ticket. Now, we said the sign was legal, and it was questioned. I said, that's after the fact. The police officer cannot stand in the street and rule on that sign. That's the law, and he's there to enforce the law. As far as he knows, there's no parking. A ticket should have been issued. Now I understand they're trying to get the sign down because it's inconvenient. To who? Now let me tell you, besides the 3 accidents, we have a church at either corner. We have the school right across from this parking area. OCO has 20 or 30 buses leaving there twice a day. They have to get around any parked cars that are in the road. When they can't get around the car, traffic coming the other direction has to wait. Someone turns that corner and hits the back of that car, it's also an accident. The car cannot be allowed to park on that side of the street, not for my convenience, but for all the people that are using this street. 2 blocks up from Mecca Drugs, 1 block up from Dunkin' Donuts. If you go down to the police department, you'll see these pins stuck in the map. 481 and State has an accident every month. We don't even look when we hear crushing steel, because we know what it is. Some idiot with a tub and a half of coffee coming out of Dunkin' Donuts is trying to make 4 lanes of traffic across 481 up State Street. Or someone's trying to make a left on a State. The first guy in the left lane says, go ahead. The guy in the right lane, he's coming through to get through the light, there's an accident. So State Street is a very busy street, and it's not just for me. Now, I'm not saying the police officer defied the law. He was given the choice to do so. I don't think so, not when the car is part of an accident. But one Sunday, I went out, and there's a great big station wagon parked across the street from me, and getting out of it is the next city judge. And I said, Your Honor, do you see the sign? He said, yes. I said, there's no parking there. Oh, I'll only be at church for an hour. I said, well, do me a favor, while you're in church, pray no one hits your car. And he laughed. So now I have a city police officer and a city judge ignoring a sign that you people have put up by city ordinance. To do what? For convenience of the squatteries? No, to prevent accidents. So I'm addressing you tonight. Mr. Sherman already knows about it. I called him. The mayor knows about it. We worked on this thing together. Everything was satisfactory. Not to my satisfactory, but everybody was satisfied. But I'm telling the rest of you, if this comes up, I want you to know that that sign is there for a reason. And if the police department or anyone else has a request to take it down, you should know that it's there for a purpose. And not only that sign, but on the other signs in the city that say no parking for a particular reason. We agree that some of them might be illegal. They might have been put up without city ordinance, but this one was. That's my complaint about taking down signs that shouldn't be taken down. Why that sign on State Street between 3rd and Park should be left there. My second point.
Can I ask a question before you?
Yes, sir.
What was the date of the accident?
2 weeks? About 2 weeks ago. A Monday night.
About the 1st?
We have, at any given night, maybe
31st.
6 cars in that driveway.
Is there a request to take the sign down?
Yeah, there is.
There is.
Right here.
Because of inconvenience.
Traffic study, right?
Yes.
Inconvenience.
I want to make a comment on this too. Is I put in for a traffic study last year to remove parking signs between 6th and 7th on Pratt. And I was told by the police department that no, they weren't going to remove them because the street was too narrow and that they could have a problem with fire trucks and such going up and down the street. Now, I don't know what the police department is doing, but when I put a request in like that, they come around and say, no, we're not going to do it. And it seems to be an inconvenience for them, or it just depends on what their convenience is, what's convenient for the, this is the appearance they get from...
Every time they get a request for a traffic study,
Yeah.
they will go out and study it, they will look into the manual and see if it is warranted. Now, if they, all they do is make a recommendation. You do not have to accept the recommendation.
Okay.
All they're doing is recommending.
And the Mayor, the sign is needed because we have school buses stopping in that exact spot every day, dropping kids off. Now, what if there's a car there? Now, the person across the street isn't complaining because his driveway is crossed from a parking lot in an apartment house. And that apartment house doesn't always have tenants with cars, but there may be 1 or 2 cars there. They can't get out. School can't get out. We can't get out. So who is it inconveniencing? Aside from the church and the other church. There's 2 churches involved here. So it's not a matter of some person that works for the city wants a sign taken down and therefore he's granted that wish. I don't think it should be. That's that point. My second point, I'll make it brief. The CDA is getting $800,000. And for years I've stood here and in the newspapers saying that if you want to give away tax money to contractors who own real estate, and we give it to them as grants, no payback. And I remember an alderman here, Dave
Halstead.
Complained continuously about the condition of a house 5 years later after we put money in it. Well, we see them. They're around the city. Do we stop giving the money to the landlords to invest in their property? That's up to you people. But I recommended a long time ago, and I'm recommending again tonight, if you're going to stand in the street and throw money at these houses and give them to landlords so that they can better their property, where a lot of them are taking the profits out of the city, they don't even live here, then I recommend that you hold the landlord responsible to the upkeep of that property that our taxes brought up to that level. If they don't keep that house up to that level and maintain that level, then we should go in and do 2 things. Either 1, get the money back, or 2, confiscate the house. Because I see it every day. I'm in the plumbing business. They take the money, they convert it. Now, what are they converting? Old properties into 2 and 3 apartments. Now we're going to pay to convert it back from 2 to 1, which is a waste of money. The guy in Spokane or Walla Walla, Washington, doesn't care about your bridge to bridge, doesn't care about your pretty flower pots, or the fact that you give him money away to landlords. He's working 3 shifts. We don't have that in this city anymore, but he's working 3 shifts to make that money to put in the pork barrel. The pork barrel that we claim is manna from heaven. So if you're going to give away our manna, let's be careful. A restaurant downtown was in business 1 year. It folded with our tax money. The bakery I'm waiting to open, someone told me it already closed, at Dandy Donuts. I said, no, he's remodeling. No, he was open and he's closed. More money down the drain. So if you're going to throw our tax money away, be careful, make sure that the people are responsible for the money we gave them and what they're doing about it. Another point and then I'll close. They asked John Glenn, when he was in his rocket ship ready to blast off, what was the last thing you thought about before the rocket left Earth? He said, I laid there and listened to that noise and rumble, and I said, oh my God, they've given the bid to build this thing to the lowest bidder. And when we get these guys to work on these houses, we take the lowest bid. They use the lowest material quality they can get. The inferior workmanship is a rush job because they're underpaid to begin with. And what do we get 5 years later? What we've got on 3rd and Rochester. So let's not throw the money around. And I don't suggest throwing it in a river. But I suggest if we're going to use it, let's make sure it's used right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I live on 602 Buffalo. Being an ex-contractor with HUD, I have to disagree with a few points that Hale just mentioned. I'm familiar with the bidding process. I did it for 15 years, from 78 till 91. The low bidder usually gets it. The process used to be monitored by a person who was familiar with contracting, an ex-contractor. His name was Jerry Holmes. Now, I agree with Dale in some respects. Jerry was very knowledgeable of what went on, wrote the specs. The program was better planned because of it. I know Oswego does that right now. Charlie Moore and Oswego does it. As far as inferior quality of work, I've seen the work. I have to disagree with that. I've been out and around. They have to hire a plumber. They have to hire an electrician, licensed. The contracting is done pretty proficiently. In regard to low bidder, yeah, low bidder usually gets it. In Oswego, it was used to be 10% closer to the guy that wrote the specs up, higher or lower. And if you're past that margin, it was thrown out. That was a safeguard for that reason, to keep it so it is bid realistically. That could be incorporated, made better, our program. Have an actual bid from an actual contractor, like they do in Oswego. But as far as work being done incorrectly, I can't believe that, because you've got a licensed, Mike Welsky's a licensed electrician. All the plumbers are involved in it. I think if you're saying that's not, the case, the only thing I have objection to it now, looking back on it, I'm out of it right now. Who knows, I might be back in it someday, is to have somebody monitor this a little bit better. A plumber maybe, to oversee it, write the specs. Electrician, a general contractor that isn't bidding on the job, to write the specs, to make sure the job is done well. As far as investment, one more point I'd like to make and I'll close. I myself have reaped the harvest, if it is a harvest, of this program. I think it's a good program. It's helped this town immensely. But I had to invest money in myself. It helps us improve our product out there. Yeah, we make the money, but we also have to put an invest. We pay 50%. It is a grant. Some of it's a grant, but you still have to put up some money. It's not a free grant, 100% grant. So it gives people incentive to improve the property, which has helped Fulton immensely. So I think, looking at the whole picture, and I've watched it since Eleanor Williams was in charge, it is a good program. It has its pros and cons, but overall it's done helped Fulton immensely. It's improved Fulton. As far as monitoring the landlords, again, I think the code enforcing department does a good job. They probably could use another guy to help. All you aldermen are out there, you can go out there and talk to, you can see the problems. We had a problem, and I mentioned go see Mr. Thompson. Plumbing went on for 3 weeks. How come? Sewer down for 3 weeks. How come?
You really want to know why? Because the person that she hired to dig the old sewer up didn't have the equipment.
That was the first week.
That was the first week.
We had 2 weeks later. It was a 2-day job.
Well,
But
then the second person she hired,
you have to find someone that is willing to come in and work on the project when the project needs to be done. The company that was hired was doing something else. And when they got clear, then they brought their equipment in and did it.
Took them 2 weeks.
This was a problem right from the get-go. None of it was a city problem. This was all...
I didn't say it was a city problem.
This was all private contractors.
Yeah,
If
she
the
still has
private
problems with her
contractors
plumber.
don't want to work, I don't know how we can force them.
Well, what I'm saying is, if we have a problem in our wards, you people are out there, you see them, you bring it up, you should address it. Bring it to the code department, which I think does a fine job. I think the code department needs another man. I think we've lost 2. We don't need an engineer, we need another code enforcement man. And I'll close.
Can I ask you a question before you sit back down? With that problem on Academy Street, the plumber that was hired works with 3 different people that dig up the old sewer. The person hired somebody to begin with before they hired a plumber. That person was not qualified, didn't have the equipment, didn't have the manpower to dig it up. So the plumber made a suggestion, I work with 3 different people, can I hire somebody that I work with? The property owner said yes. Actually, the daughter of the property owner said yes. So the plumber gets a hold of another contractor who does have the equipment. The first day this guy shows up, his equipment doesn't work. The second day he comes back, he finally gets his equipment working and says, I'll come back the next day. Well, in January in Fulton, New York, we got, 8, 9, 10 inches of snow that night. The contractor also has contracts to plow snow. His guys are out all night plowing snow, and at 7 o'clock in the morning, is he going to come over here and dig up this lady's sewer? Now, you say that as alderman we should address these problems. What would you have me do? I don't have a jackhammer to go dig it up myself. The city isn't, in fact, I even called the city attorney to see if we wanted to take that responsibility
Getting off
to
the
do it
subject
ourselves.
here, that was, I addressed that to you because he came to my house thinking I was the alderman. I said, talk to
I don't know how
Mr.
that-
Thompson, and if you have a question, ask Mr. Kim. That's the way I handle it, okay? I'm not saying, I just don't, personally, I don't think that should have gone the 2 weeks after the guy was kicked off the job, the first guy. The sewer was down for 2 weeks in Fulton, New York. I think that's a problem. That should have been addressed. There should be a law.
If that is a problem, what is the solution?
Maybe we ought to go to the plumbing board. The plumbing board seems to get on issues like that. Mike, I'm not.
And what I did, I told that homeowner that if they had a problem with a plumber, to file a report with me, and I would get it to the plumbing board, and they could look into it. I have not seen anything.
Okay.
Until I get something.
There's not a problem then.
We tried to talk to the contractor. We became more involved in this than a lot of people realize.
I realize you did.
Trying to get this
I
done.
realize you did.
And it was just
I realize. Fine.
comedy of errors.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Your Honor, could I say something? These neighborhood issues have been a very big concern for quite a few years now, and all this money we brought in the city to fix these houses up, it's kind of been a double-edged sword. I've seen it a lot in the 6th Ward. The scores of vacant buildings were adding up because nobody wants to live next to these wonderful places that are getting these fix-ups. I think that it's good to a certain extent, but I think the city over the last 10 or 15 years has been saturated with them. And the answer is not hire more code people because, frankly, as a homeowner, not as a landlord, why should I hire or pay to hire what amounts to no more than property managers for landlords? That's what code enforcement people are doing. They're managing problems that landlords are unwilling to do themselves. And the police department's managing these social problems that these property owners are far removed from. I think we need about 60% less of what we got. We need good affordable housing for renters, people starting out, but I think if I hear any more about low-income housing coming to the city, I'm going to throw up. I'm just sick and tired of it. And it's destroyed our neighborhoods. It's destroyed the quality of life for our senior citizens and our vulnerable people. This last year that I was on the Common Council, of all the time I've been involved in public life in this city, has been the biggest problem that I've ever had in the 6th Ward. And this is what it's from. We've sent numerous letters in one block on Ontario Street where the main homeowner population is senior citizens, 30, 40, 50 years lived in this city, and they can't even get the time of day from these people. And these houses are all either being rented through our local community development agency, or they've been fixed up by them. Every one of them, with the exception of the people that actually own a property there. So you gotta go a long way to convince me that I should reach in my wallet, or anybody else that's lived here all their life, and hire more property managers and call them code enforcement people for these people that don't give a damn about anybody that live here. And all they say is, well, the way these people act's not our problem. Put them next to them and it'd be their problem. So, yeah, there is some good, but I think the line should have been drawn 12 years ago on it. That's just my opinion.
Thank you.
I'm not taking sides here, but I get phone calls and I get people at the door. And I was asked about this sewer problem. I checked into it directly. And I usually don't say anything unless I get the facts. I went directly to the plumbing company. I said, what's the story with the sewer? That seems to be causing a political problem here. He said there was no problem. They hired a gentleman, I won't use his name, never showed up for a week. When he finally got there, about the 10th day, he didn't have the equipment to do the job. The plumber called Florida. The people that own the house were down in Florida. He said, you know, we can't wait any longer. The weather is bad. The snow is piling up. It's below freezing, wind chill, and we've got to get out there and work. What are we going to do? He got his own equipment. The biggest contractor in the city or the county came out there and busted his equipment because there was about 8 inches of concrete in the road. And before he started to dig, they found out that there was 2 sewer lines, a sanitary sewer, a storm sewer, 2 gas lines, a water line, and a Metropolitan Water Board. No one knows what's under the ground, therefore no one should be shooting their mouth off about how much the job should have cost or not cost. And I said to him, what's this $9,000 stuff? He says, you know, that's about the 5th time I've heard that. It's $6,000. Somebody's blown it up. And he said, the woman called me from Florida and begged with me and said, are you mad at me? He says, why am I mad at you? Well, I hear there's so much going on over there because of my sewer. Bottom line is this. I spoke to the plumber and I spoke to the people. They had a toilet running. Not well, but running. They weren't plugged up to the gills where they couldn't use any of the plumbing. That's another falsity. The second point I want to make, I want to ask someone to give me the figures on the ratio of HUD helping or CDA helping single dwelling homeowners compared to multiple dwelling. Who's getting more of the pork barrel? I don't mind helping the poor little old lady who needs the money, but how many of those people are getting it?
That depends on what programs are funded. When the HUD provides funding, they will provide it for specific programs. We have got a program, one of the programs is to help the elderly, owner-occupied, and we are doing that, yes. I wish there was more money in that fund than there is for renovating rental property. Unfortunately, the federal government has decided that that is where they want this money earmarked. Now, is it going to change with the state taking over the disbursement of the small cities funds? We don't know. But they are the ones that tell us where it can be spent. And that's...
And as far as quality of workmanship, I'll stand behind any plumber, heating man, or electrician in this city. I've seen their work. I sat on boards. I've been working at it for 40 years. What I will question, although some may get angry, don't tell me that you can't put in a $4 paneling instead of a $14 paneling. Don't tell me you can't put in rough sawn wood instead of good quality wood. Don't tell me that carpenters and contractors don't cut corners with quality of material, because it's done.
We have seen that in some of the areas where there's been structural problems because of not using the correct material. Yes. And that has been brought to our attention, and it's been brought to the attention of the contractors and kept on file. Yes, and we try not to allow that to happen. But again, if we set specs up. I agree with Tom. Maybe what we need to do is set specific specs that they have to bid by, and the quality of the material that needs to go into it, and that will put a stop to it.
And the aftermarket, after it's done, when the guy's collecting rent and he's putting the money in his pocket, and the place is dilapidating, it's falling down and deteriorating, who's going to go in there and say, hey, we didn't give you this money to turn this property back into what it was. You have to maintain it the way we gave you the money to get it to. That's where the code enforcement office comes in. If you don't maintain it to the standard that we gave you the money to do it with, then you should be paying the money back.
It depends
I
on what
agree.
the program is under.
But Al, the council did try to steer that money in a different direction this year, with less rental units and more first-time home buyers programs and things like that. Young people that will at least have some guarantee they'll be in the city for 10 years and, single-family homes. So we're trying to go that way within the guidelines that we have.
You're doing a good job.
I don't think at this point in time there's anyone on this council that wants to see any more rental property in the city of Fulton.
No?
The problems that we have, most of the problems that we have are with rental properties.
Yep.
With landlords that don't want to take care of the problem and don't care who they rent to.
That's the number one issue in my area this year, and the frustrating part of it is we spent hours in meetings, and there's just so little we can do about it. We can make arrests when it warrants it, and we can cite landlords, we can call them. I've called lots of them on the weekends and ask them to go clean the yards up and talk to their tenants, and some of them will talk to you and some of them will hang up on you.
Another time I'll bring up a different subject. It's a matter of jobs. No one wants to hear this. But with agencies, it's a matter of jobs. The more manna we bring into the city, the longer we keep our jobs. The fancier the office buildings we get to sit in. So when they go out and get this manna from heaven, it's for their own good too. And the more money they throw around the city, the more money they keep for themselves. It's a matter of jobs. That's what it comes down to, jobs. So you guys have a tough job ahead. I haven't been around here because you've been doing a good job.
Thank
And
you.
when I came in tonight, first thing out of Weston's mouth was, you come here to make trouble tonight?
I didn't say that. You know I didn't. I know better than to say that. I just want to kind of reiterate what the mayor has said, because that's where I was going with it. We have to be, and also Alderman Woodward mentioned it too, that the grants that we get in so many cases are determined by the CDA, by the not the CDA, but by the agency that's making the grants. They're for specific things, so we don't get a certain amount of money to be spent any way we want to. We're very restricted, and we have to work within those guidelines. Mr. Squitieri did mention some of the businesses, and the council has a loan advisory committee through the CDA that makes recommendations on new businesses, and we certainly review all those. We certainly look at the figures, and it's quite an elaborate guidelines that we use, and we want to make sure that we are making good decisions. But at times, that's not going to work out. We've normally had a very good, and I can't remember what the rate is now, but I think the CDA has a very good percentage rate increase in what the businesses that they have taken on. But occasionally you're going to have a business that just doesn't work out. So I think we have to take some of the bad with the good. But in most cases, we're certainly going to be very careful with the way we distribute the monies for these new businesses.
Is there anyone else in the audience that has any business to bring before the council? Anyone on the council?
Yes, I have something tonight. I'd like a traffic study done at West 4th Street North and Batavia Ave for the possible installation of a stop sign. Joe has a resolution ready to go on it.
Okay. Would you read the resolution?
Resolve the Traffic Department conduct a traffic study on West 4th Street North and Batavia Ave for the feasibility for the installation of a stop sign.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Anything else, John?
Nothing else tonight, Your Honor.
Gentlemen on this side? No? I will now entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session in regards to contract negotiations. I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Looking for more guidance.
Oh, they're going to give it to me tonight. Okay.